Anyway, since I'm not going to be around for your Big O6 video, I'll just get this out of the way now. One thing I've always found intriguing about Sonic 06's story is how, in adding layers to it by showing things from other characters' point of view, they managed to create a side that's far more interesting than Sonic's own perspective. Shadow's story places him very, very close to the center of the game's plot.
No kidding. Shadow's the dude getting things done, learning the lessons, saving the day, being Silver's father figure. Sonic's just a drooling zombie helplessly running after Elise.
Shadow's closer to Mephiles, the true villain. His personal struggles are deeper and more intense and compelling than anything Sonic has to go through or deal with. We see some great character development between him and the other members of Team Dark. It's like the great Clement said.
But I digress. Booyah, but I digress. But he's the main character of this game, not Sonic.
Exactly, Clement. Shadow is the main character of this game. It's just kind of funny to me that a game called Sonic the Hedgehog sometimes feel like it isn't really even about him. The only way this could be more ironic is if Silver, who seems to have garnered even more contempt than Shadow, could somehow wind up stealing the show.
It's Sega. If there's one thing they love more than being horrible in advertising, it's brutally and senselessly replacing the main characters from each of their series.
Point is, Sonic is an ineffective character who doesn't have enough agency to drive the plot in this game, like Samus and other M. I wouldn't consider Sonic's treatment in this game to be quite as offensive as Samus's treatment, though. Actually, I would. But I'll just leave the rest to you guys when you get around to that.
Yeah, and thanks for making me do yet another Dissected in between my promises I do with Sonic 06 next. Compulsive lying will greatly increase my integrity as a discussion leader.
Anyway, I feel like a broken record. When it comes to Sonic, agency tends to vary from game to game, partly because the many, many writers always seem to be changing how they approach each game's story. But in terms of gameplay, well, like I've been saying so many times, what makes video games unique is the player's involvement. Sonic 3 and Knuckles makes the story almost interactive, and it happens inside the level, so the character agency is close to Metroid. Other times, a story is presented like an RPG with hubs and explorable places, and other times a story is presented as one huge roller coaster like Rush of action stages and high-energy cutscenes in one go like Adventure 2, however inconsistent the gameplay is. Sonic is an action hero. You want to be pushing buttons and making things happen. You want things to happen because of you. It's empowering. When you're just watching something happen, something that's completely out of your control, well, you just don't want that sort of thing to go on for too long or happen too often. This is what can make talky games annoying to some people. It's all about player input and how much they have. Is it no wonder people are opposed to cutscenes in Sonic games at all when we're in this arcade-minded, adrenaline-filled state of mind?
In the middle of a stage, sure, but a brain cooldown in between intense levels is much appreciated.
But ignoring slower-paced RPG-minded Sonic games like Adventure in 06, you can imagine how people are completely indifferent about stories in Sonic games, that they're not needed, just like Mega Man X. Perhaps a few story beats, but mostly gameplay.
Yeah, speaking of Mega Man X again, you focused nicely on the first game, but as the series progresses, just like Sonic, it starts to become more soap opera. Twists and turns, betrayals, story arcs. Sure, a lot of people played for the gameplay. But you can imagine people start buying the sequels also to find out how the story goes, right? Even when they don't care that much for the gameplay. Mega Man X1 does an excellent job bringing the gamer close to Mega Man, so now I'm hooked. Gotta find out how it continues. Zero comes back. Oh my god, I have to find out how. Sonic, especially in Sonic Adventure 2, that ending, just massive. Drama, teamwork, sacrifice, it was a big ending. After that I wanted to play the next game to see where my heroes would be going next. Even if it was yet another Sonic Shuffle, or Sonic Happy Kart Racing, or the actual Sonic Heroes follow-up.
But it's about gameplay. Keep in mind, I don't mind an in-depth story. It's not like I don't want it there. I just see it as a nice bonus. A big part of my enjoyment in the Mega Man games in general comes from following the story. The gameplay doesn't often change much, if at all, but is consistently good most of the time, and the storyline complements it, making it a true adventure, a chronicle that just goes on and on and on, spanning many sub-series, and I want to see what happens next. It's a big part of why I'm so bummed out that there haven't been any substantial Mega Man games for a long time, and from the looks of it, probably never will be. Aside from Mighty Number 9... I want a ZX3, or a Legends 3, or an X9, or some crazy new adventure that comes after all that, because I want to find out what happens to this world they've created and the characters in it. Just that I'll never know drives me nuts, and it shows just how invested in a game's story players like me can easily wind up being. But like I said, it's a bonus. If a game like X8 ends up having a subpar story, whatever. At least there's still fun gameplay.
True, true. Look at it this way. Let's say we go to McDonald's, get ourselves a Happy Meal, and there's a fun toy in it, a part of a Transformer. Collect all the parts to have your own cool giant Transformer. So you go back to McDonald's week after week for a new Happy Meal, and all of a sudden it changes. Now there's a different toy in your Happy Meal, some stupid pig pony. So you're angry. You want the new part of your unfinished Transformer. And your parents can complain that it's about the food. The toy isn't extra. All they want. And yes, the hamburger may taste nice, but damn it, we feel betrayed. We came here specifically to finish our Transformer.
Which is pretty much how I feel about Mega Man, I think.
Yeah, that's our perspective with Sonic now. We got hooked as hell on Sonic Universe and its characters, tuning in each game to see how it progresses. And it progresses like a drunken rhino trying to control a brain with half its wheels missing, slipping on thin ice. And as we sit in the back train cart watching terrified how our train is slowly slipping and scraping towards an enormous cliff of deadly pink rocks and flesh-eating unicorns about to swallow us whole. Just like that, we sees the Sonic series slipping helplessly towards Sonic Music Note and Happy Pink Candyland as well. Back to the roots, huh?
Shame for you, but that's your problem. Sonic's problem is that it's so inconsistent in its tones and purposes in its previous games. There's too many wildly differing fans of the series, and where Nintendo wisely made Mario mute, he's always presented as an audience surrogate. Even if his games become story-heavy, he's the only character who doesn't talk in Mario Sunshine, the game in which everyone else finally has a voice, for better or worse. Sonic, on the other hand, is all over the place with no consistency, which is why Sonic fans are always at odds with each other, and why you get so many frustrated people, each with their own personal special vision of Sonic. Not because Sonic is mysterious like Samus and leaves the player wondering, but because he's clearly so many different people at the same time. And then these people send you notes that it's about gameplay, not story.
Yes, that is the one reason why we get people frustrated at us and Sonic fans are fighting each other. No other reason at all.
Well, the fact that each game works on a different level in your brain could be considered the core problem of the entire series, I suppose.
Ignoring the story, player input giving empowerment also works within the gameplay itself. 2 words. Scripted events. Now, I'm okay with an occasional spring or booster giving the player a little push, but there are some games where you can't go more than a few seconds without touching something that essentially robs the player blind and forces them to surrender all control to the game itself for a moment, and it plays itself. Games that are super linear and only give the player so many options and ways to traverse Sonic's world, thus forcing them into more scripted events, also reduce the player's agency. This is something I tended to talk about a lot in my admittedly out-of-date Sonic reviews. I was always driving home how this game or that game limits what the player does, that there's too many scripted events and the player is always trapped in a hallway or whatever. But like I said, I don't mind a few of these things sprinkled here and there for whatever thrill people get from them. But the way I see it is, well, it's simple. The more of these we see crammed into a game, the less time the player gets to have actually playing anything, and the more time they spend relegated to the same role they'd have watching a movie, which contradicts the very nature of a game, particularly action-adventure games. The main reason I see the modern stages as a massive improvement over the daytime stages is because the player has more input, more decision-making. There's more space to roam around in, and the scripted events are downplayed, most of the time anyway. And that's enough for me, because with this spin on the daytime stage formula, the player is given much more control over what they do, or rather, what they're allowed to do, where they can go, and what they can interact with. This means they have more agency, more input, more power, and for me, that can only be a good thing, because the more the player is forced to do on their own, the more the gameplay experience is enriched and fleshed out.
Right. We didn't talk about scripted events in our video, did we? Not much, anyway. Yeah, it makes sense.
And playing Sonic after the sequel recently, I appreciated the idea more that when there's more characters in Sonic, they have their own story and accomplishments and are more than just a simple character model swap.
Oh, dangerous talk there, mate. Big part of the Sonic community hates the Sonic Adventure way of each character having their own gameplay and stories you need to go through.
Yeah, if you ever want the other characters to be playable again in the series, we probably need 1 or 2 games where they're just optional, differently skilled Sonics, la Sonic 3 and Knuckles and Sonic Advance, before the audience accepts them as unique elements inside the games again. Although I agree, I like having Sonic spells be useful and having things to do again. But we're apparently still stuck at a grief stage of Sonic 06 strategy, so we're not allowed to remember that every single Sonic game for the past 7 years have been nothing but Sonic alone back to his roots stuff.
I know, man. I wish people could just get over '06 and forget about it. I mean, that's why the daytime stages were conceived. Because of '06, everyone was so afraid of Sonic Adventure-esque gameplay, of anything even remotely resembling it, so Sonic Team was compelled to make something that didn't resemble it at all. And it's only in more recent games like Generations and even Lost World that they're finally getting a little more comfortable with bringing some of the old design philosophies and whatnot back into practice. Back to after the sequel, though. Here's the last thing I want to talk about, guys. In Sonic before the sequel, you'd routinely be forced to switch between characters like in Adventure 2, so they'd both have screen time and importance throughout the story. However, it's much trickier to make both characters feel important if you're only playing as one of them the entire time, like you're able to in Sonic after the sequel. In a lot of, say, Mega Man games, specifically the X and ZX games, you can choose to play as different characters and see things from their side. This is handled in a pretty clunky way, because you're really just playing the exact same game from their perspective, if it could even be called a different perspective. Sometimes they may face a different boss or something, but this is extremely rare. It isn't even so much a let's see this from their point of view thing, as it is a let's replace this character model with that character model in a what if scenario thing. Leg for Bird could have just taken the ZX approach with Sonic ATS all too easily. Just swap one character model for the other in the cutscenes to go along with the gameplay depending on who you'd be playing as, and you could see Tails save the day instead of Sonic. Final boss aside, I think. What I find amazing is how both characters are made equally important throughout the game's story, in just about every cutscene regardless of who you play as. It never feels like either is one-upping the other, and no matter who you're playing as, you almost always see them together in the cutscenes. They're both important. They both have agency and never at each other's expense. Isn't that something? We've never seen Sonic Team handle a game this way. One of my favorite cutscenes, one that I think captures the spirit of this whole game, plays at the start of Moon Mansion Zone. Tails is scared by what's ahead. Sonic mocks him a bit by acting like a ghoul. Tails gets scared by a real ghoul that's behind Sonic, who is bewildered that Tails appears to be scared of Sonic himself. This is a great scene because both characters are treated just right. Tails is scared, but he isn't the butt of the joke. Sonic is ignorant of what's behind him and acts a bit like a git, but just enough to prevent him from being the flawless messiah figure that the more recent games make him out to be, which is a problem that you guys have already covered. I guess I felt this was worth bringing to your attention because it shows that we, the fans, who have stuck with these characters for all these years, really do know these characters better than the series' own writers that change every few years. You guys are doing good work, and people are listening to you, to us, and it's just great to see works like this game bring these characters to life in the way we've more or less always wanted to see them. Well, that concludes what I wanted to say about Sonic.
Yeah.
I hope these were some interesting arguments about the effect story has on gameplay, and I hope they help you in your discussions with fans who hate you for discussing the story for whatever reason.
If they want to win a discussion we're having by just stating their opinion instead of actual arguments, I doubt they're smart enough to even follow these videos anyway.
Well, I see their point. The latest Sonic games are great with their gameplay and don't really need the story.
No argument there. Sonic Colors would be a million times better without its story.
But there's a story nonetheless, and as such I feel justified whining about it.
Fair enough. Good luck with your future videos.
Bye! See you all next time, and next time we talk about...
Sonic 06?
If nobody interrupts...
See ya. Wouldn't want to be ya. Toodles!